I'm 35, my wife's 32, and we've been together for a bit over 5 years. We have twin sons who are 8 months old. Yeah, I know, twins, right? Life's been a roller coaster, but I always thought we were on this ride together. I met my wife when I was 30 and she was 27. We actually met through a tissue. No, seriously, it's not a typo. I saw her photo and wrote to her. We corresponded a bit and I asked her out on a date. I paid for everything and we had a great time talking. I felt this instant connection. I knew she was the one, so I asked her to a cafe and we had our first kiss. After that, we went to the cinema and ended up at her place. I won't go into details, but it was an unforgettable night. Fast forward a few years, and we've built a life together. I work as a barber, and she's a bartender. Money's always been enough for us. We're not swimming in luxury, but we've never gone without. Lately, though, things have changed. I've noticed my wife treating me differently. She's distant, cold, and seems more interested in our neighbor. This guy has a wife too, but it doesn't seem to stop anything. One day at work, my brother called me. I have two brothers, one is 29 and the other is 31. It was the younger one. He told me he saw my wife kissing our neighbor. He even took some photos. I felt my world crumble. After work, I called a lawyer. We sent the photos to him, but he said we needed more evidence. I decided not to confront her just yet. I needed a plan, and I needed to be sure. I love my wife, but if she's really cheating on me, I'll take everything from her. If it gets worse, I'll leave her with nothing. Every day, I pretend like everything's normal. I smile, I laugh, and I play the loving husband. But inside, I'm boiling. I'm planning. I'm waiting. A few nights ago, I came home late from work. She was already asleep, or at least pretending to be. I sat in the living room thinking about the times we shared, the promises we made. How did we end up here? How did she end up in another man's arms? I thought about our boys. They're too young to understand any of this, but they will grow up one day. They will ask questions. The next morning, I decided to test her. I told her I had to leave for a barber convention out of town. She barely looked up from her phone. Just said, "Okay, have fun." No questions, no concerns. It was like she was happy to see me go. I called my brother and told him my plan. He agreed to keep an eye on our place while I was away. I packed a bag, kissed my boys goodbye, and left. I didn't go far, just to my brother's house a few blocks away. We set up a surveillance camera facing my front door. It didn't take long. That very night, my neighbor showed up. I watched the footage as he walked right up to my door, looked around, and knocked. She let him in. They didn't come out for hours. The next morning, I called the lawyer again. I sent him the new footage. He said it was enough to proceed. I felt a mix of relief and anger. This was really happening. My wife was really cheating on me. I stayed at my brother's for a few more days, gathering more evidence. Every night, the neighbor would come over. Every night, they'd spend hours together. I started to feel numb. The pain was there, but it was like my mind couldn't process it anymore. I was in survival mode. On the fourth day, I couldn't take it anymore. I went home. She was surprised to see me. "Back early?" she asked, feigning surprise. I nodded, didn't say much. Just watched her, trying to see if she'd crack, if she'd show any signs of guilt. But she was a good actress. She went about her day like nothing was wrong. We're still in the same house, but it's like living with a stranger. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to forgive her for the sake of our boys, but another part of me wants to make her pay, wants to see her suffer like I'm suffering. So here I am asking for advice. What should I do? Should I try to work things out for the sake of our family? Or should I go through with the divorce and take everything from her? I feel lost, angry, and hurt. Any advice would be appreciated. Okay, that was how I thought I would feel if I confronted her, but I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to do it. The hurt, the anger, and the pain were just too much. So instead, I've been keeping it all inside and pretending nothing's wrong. The days drag on, and I keep going through the motions of our life. I try to focus on my work at the barber shop, but my mind is constantly wandering. Every time I see a happy couple come in, my heart aches. I find myself wondering how many of them are living lies like I am. My wife's behavior hasn't changed much. She's still distant, still cold. I watch her closely, looking for any signs of remorse or guilt, but she hides it well. Maybe she doesn't even feel guilty. Maybe she's convinced herself that what she's doing is justified. One day, while working on a client, I decided to gather more evidence. I borrowed a friend's car and parked it a few blocks away from our house. I waited until my neighbor showed up again. I followed them, keeping my distance. They went to a nearby hotel. My heart sank as I watched them walk in together, laughing and holding hands. I felt like I was going to be sick, but I needed to see more. I needed to know how far this had gone. I parked the car and waited for them to come out. It took hours. When they finally did, they were still all over each other, completely oblivious to the world around them. I snapped a few photos and drove back to my brother's place. I sent the photos to my lawyer, who confirmed that this was enough evidence to proceed. He advised me to keep quiet for now, to gather as much evidence as possible. Over the next few weeks, I followed them whenever I could. Each time it felt like a knife twisting in my heart. They met at hotels, parks, even her workplace when it was closed. It was like they couldn't get enough of each other. Then came the hardest part, pretending everything was normal at home. I had to look her in the eyes, kiss her goodbye in the mornings, and act like the loving husband. All the while I was dying inside. The rage, the hurt, the betrayal, it was all consuming me. One evening I overheard a conversation between her and the neighbor. I had installed a hidden microphone in the living room. They were planning a weekend getaway. She told him she'd make up some excuse about visiting her sister. That was the breaking point for me. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her keep betraying me and destroying our family, but I didn't want to confront her without a solid plan. I called my lawyer and told him everything. He suggested we hire a private investigator to gather even more evidence. The more we had, the stronger our case would be. I agreed, and we set everything in motion. The PI did a great job. He followed them discreetly, took photos, and recorded their conversations. Within a week, we had enough evidence to prove the affair beyond a shadow of a doubt, but I still couldn't bring myself to confront her. The thought of seeing her reaction, hearing her lies, and facing the truth head-on was too much for me to bear. So, I continued to play the waiting game, pretending everything was fine while my insides were torn apart. One day, I was at the barbershop when my brother called. He said he saw my wife and the neighbor at a restaurant acting like a couple. He took some photos and sent them to me. It was like a punch to the gut. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, but I still wasn't ready to confront her. So I've been sitting on this mountain of evidence, waiting for the right moment. I don't know when that moment will come, or if it ever will. But I know I can't keep living this lie forever. I'm reaching out to you all because I need advice. What should I do? Should I confront her now and end this charade? Or should I keep gathering evidence until I have an airtight case? How do I deal with the pain, the anger, and the betrayal? Thanks for listening. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. I'm back with an update, and things have escalated in a way I never imagined. If you read my first post, you know my situation. If not, here's a quick recap. My wife's been cheating on me with our neighbor, and I've been gathering evidence. I was playing the waiting game, pretending everything was normal while dying inside. But I knew I couldn't keep it up forever. After work yesterday, I realized I couldn't keep living this lie. I had to confront her, get her out of the house, and move on with my life. I was determined. I got home and she wasn't there. My heart raced as I waited, but I knew I had to do it. I called her, but she didn't answer. Typical, right? She finally came home later that evening, acting like everything was fine. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Out with a girlfriend," she said, not meeting my eyes. I could sense the lies dripping from her words. I didn't wait for more excuses. I went straight to the point. "I know everything," I said, pulling out the evidence I had gathered. Photos, videos, text logs. I laid it all out in front of her. Her face turned pale as she looked at the damning evidence. "Take your things and get out of here." She tried to cry, to beg, but I was done. I couldn't listen to her lies anymore. I stood firm, and eventually she packed a bag and left. The house felt different without her, almost lighter, but the pain and anger were still there. As soon as she was out the door, I knew I needed to let the neighbor's wife know. She deserved to know what was happening behind her back, too. I sent her a message asking to meet at a nearby cafe. We agreed on a time, and I got there early. I ordered a coffee, hoping it would steady my nerves. I laid out the copies of the evidence on the table, waiting for her to arrive. When she walked in, I saw the look of confusion and dread on her face as she spotted the photos. She sat down and picked up the first picture, her hands trembling. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It's evidence of your husband's affair with my wife, I replied, my voice steady but filled with a mix of anger and sadness. Her face crumbled, and I could see how hard it hit her. It was a painful moment for both of us. I handed her the copies and we didn't say much more. We both needed time to process this. She left, and so did I. The drive back home was a blur. I couldn't shake the image of her face, the pain and betrayal mirrored in her eyes. I knew exactly how she felt. Once I got home, the emptiness of the house hit me again. I needed a break from all this, some way to clear my mind and numb the pain. I called my brothers and asked them to come over. They didn't hesitate. When they arrived, I told them everything. We cracked open a bottle of whiskey and started drinking. The alcohol numbed the edges of my pain, and we talked about everything and nothing. It felt good to let it all out, to have someone listen and understand. We laughed, reminisced about old times, and for a brief moment, I felt a bit of relief. As the night went on, the whiskey did its job. The details of the night are hazy, but I remember waking up at my brother's house the next morning. My head was pounding and my mouth felt like sandpaper. But despite the hangover, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to face the reality of my situation, but I wasn't alone. My brothers were there for me, and that gave me some strength. We talked a bit more before I headed back home. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, but I knew this was the beginning of something new, even if it was painful. I spent the rest of the day cleaning up, getting rid of anything that reminded me of her. It was cathartic, like I was purging the toxic energy from my life. A few days later, my neighbor's wife called me. She thanked me for opening her eyes and said she appreciated my honesty. It was a difficult conversation, but it felt good to know she understood and was taking steps to deal with her own situation. We agreed to meet again someday, to check in and support each other through this mess. In the meantime, I've been focusing on myself and my boys. They're my world, and I need to be strong for them. I've been spending more time with them, taking them to the park, reading them bedtime stories, and just enjoying their presence. They don't understand what's happening, but they sense the change. I'm doing my best to keep things normal for them. I also decided to take some time off work. I needed a break from everything, a chance to regroup and figure out my next steps. My boss was understanding, and my clients were supportive. It was a relief to know I had a support system outside of my family. During my time off, I've been seeing a therapist. It's been helpful to talk to someone who can provide an objective perspective. The sessions have been tough, but I'm starting to work through my feelings of betrayal and anger. The therapist has given me tools to cope with the pain and strategies to move forward. One thing I've realized is that I need to focus on my own healing. I've been so consumed with the betrayal and the pain that I've neglected myself. I've started working out again, trying to get back into shape. It's not just about the physical aspect, but also about regaining control of my life. I've also reconnected with some old friends. It's been good to catch up, to have people around who care about me. They've been supportive, and it's helped to have a distraction from everything that's been going on. The house still feels empty without her, but it's getting easier. I've been making changes, redecorating, and trying to make it my own space again. It's a slow process, but it's helping me heal. A couple of weeks after the confrontation, I got another call from my neighbor's wife. She wanted to meet up again. We decided to meet at the same cafe. When I got there, she was already waiting, looking more composed than the last time. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down. "Of course," I replied. "How are you holding up?" She sighed. "It's been tough, but I'm taking it one day at a time. I filed for divorce. I couldn't stay with him after what he did." I nodded. "I understand. I'm in the process of doing the same." We talked for a while, sharing our experiences and offering support to each other. It felt good to have someone who understood exactly what I was going through. By the end of our conversation, we agreed to stay in touch and support each other through the divorce process. Back at home, I continued focusing on myself and my boys. We established new routines, and I started to feel a sense of normalcy returning. The pain was still there, but it was becoming more manageable. One night, while putting the boys to bed, my eldest looked at me and asked, "Daddy, where's Mommy?" The question hit me hard, but I knew I had to be honest. "Mommy had to go away for a while," I said gently. "But we're going to be okay, I promise." He seemed satisfied with that answer and snuggled into his bed. As I watched him fall asleep, I realized that my priority now was to create a stable and loving environment for my boys. They deserved that, and so did I. I reconnected with my brothers regularly, and we made it a point to have weekly hangouts. Sometimes we just have a few beers and talk about life. Other times we'd go out and do something fun. They've been my rock through all of this, and I'm grateful for their support. To everyone reading this, thank you for your support and advice. It's been a tough journey, but I'm getting through it one day at a time. If anyone has been through something similar, I'd love to hear your stories and any advice you might have. I'm back with another update. If you've been following my story, you know it's been a whirlwind of emotions, revelations, and tough decisions. I thought things couldn't get more intense, but life has a way of surprising you. After my last post, where I kicked my wife out and informed the neighbor's wife about the affair, I realized there were still a few more steps I needed to take to start moving forward. I had been so focused on the immediate crisis that I hadn't taken the time to inform my loved ones about what was happening. This part is just as important because it's about finding support and rebuilding my life. The first call I made was to my mom. I had been avoiding it, partly because I didn't want to face the reality, and partly because I didn't want to break her heart. My mom and I have always had a good relationship. She's the kind of person who wears her heart on her sleeve, and I knew this news would devastate her, but I couldn't keep it from her any longer. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hi, sweetie. How are you?" she asked, her voice cheerful and warm. "I need to tell you something important," I began, feeling the weight of the words I was about to say. "I'm divorcing my wife. She cheated on me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her processing the information. "Oh, honey," she finally said, her voice soft with concern. "I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" "I'm managing," I replied. "It's been really hard, but I'm taking it one day at a time." "I wish I could be there to hug you," she said, and I could hear the emotion in her voice. I thought she might start crying, but she held it together. We talked for a long time, and it felt good to open up to her. She listened, offered advice, and reminded me that I wasn't alone. By the end of the conversation, I felt a bit lighter. I also texted my dad to let him know what was going on. He's always been a bit more stoic, not one for emotional displays. His response was typical of him. "That's tough, son. Great that you're handling it." It was simple, but it meant a lot. Even though he's not the most expressive person, I knew he had my back. Next, I reached out to my friends. These are the people who've seen me through thick and thin, and I knew I needed their support now more than ever. I told them about the affair and the upcoming divorce. They all responded with concern and encouragement, offering to help in any way they could. We even planned a night out to take my mind off things. It felt good to have my friends rally around me. Despite all this support, there was still the matter of my wife's belongings. She had never come to pick up her things, and I was getting tired of seeing them around the house. It was a constant reminder of the betrayal. One day I decided enough was enough. I packed up all her stuff and took it to the neighbor's door. I left it there with a note that simply said, "You're garbage." When my wife came by later, I silently pointed to the door and told her, "Your stuff is at the neighbor's. Take it and go." She looked furious, but there was nothing she could do. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction watching her storm off. A few days later, the neighbor himself came to talk to me. He had the nerve to knock on my door and confront me. "You ruined 2 lives in one day," he said, as if he was the victim in all this. It was almost comical how delusional he sounded. "Are you serious?" I shot back. "You should be ashamed of yourself. You're not a man. You're a child who can't control himself." He didn't have much to say after that. He left with his tail between his legs, and I couldn't help but feel a bit of satisfaction. It was one small victory in a sea of chaos. Back at home, I continued focusing on myself and my boys. We established new routines, and I started to feel a sense of normalcy returning. The pain was still there, but it was becoming more manageable. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Life started to settle into a new rhythm. I focused on my work, my boys, and my own healing. I knew I still had a long way to go, but I was making progress. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I received a message from my neighbor's wife. She wanted to meet up again. We agreed on a time and place, and I found myself looking forward to it. When we met, She seemed more at peace. "I just wanted to thank you again," she said, "for everything. I know it wasn't easy, but you did the right thing." "It wasn't easy for either of us," I replied, "but we're both moving forward, and that's what matters." We talked for a while, and she shared how she was adjusting to her new life. It was inspiring to see her strength, and it gave me hope for my own journey. As I walked back to my car, I felt a sense of closure. This chapter of my life was coming to an end, and a new one was beginning. It was time to focus on the future and the possibilities it held. To everyone reading this, thank you for your support and advice. It's been a tough journey, but I'm getting through it one day at a time. If anyone has been through something similar, I'd love to hear your stories and any advice you might have. I'm back with another update. If you've been following my story, you know it's been a roller coaster of emotions and tough decisions. I'm trying to rebuild my life piece by piece, and it hasn't been easy, but I'm getting there. One thing that's been helping me a lot lately is fishing. I've always been fond of it, but recently, it's become more than just a hobby. It's my escape. I've been going out on my boat, just me in the open water, trying to catch fish. Well, maybe it's not just me out there. I'm with nature, and it's been incredibly soothing. There's something about the stillness, the quiet, and the rhythmic motion of the water that helps clear my mind. It's a space where I can think, or sometimes not think at all, just be present. Interestingly enough, I've also started going to church again. I know it might sound hypocritical since I haven't been there in ages, but there's a certain comfort I find in the rituals, the community, and the sense of peace. It's like I'm reconnecting with a part of myself that I had forgotten about. The sermons and the hymns bring a sense of calm that I desperately need right now. It's not about seeking answers, but more about finding a place where I can breathe and feel a bit of solace. Work has been another constant in my life. I recently returned to my barbershop full-time. Getting back into the routine has been both challenging and comforting. My clients have been supportive, and many of them know something's up, but are kind enough not to pry too much. It feels good to focus on my craft, to create something tangible with my hands, and to see the satisfaction on my clients' faces when they leave. It's a small reminder that life goes on, and I'm still capable of bringing a bit of normalcy and happiness into the world. But of course, there's still the matter of the court. The divorce proceedings are moving forward, and despite my initial dread, I'm starting to feel a strange sense of anticipation. The trial is set for next week, and while I've been trying not to think about it too much, it's hard not to. I can't help but imagine how my wife will react when she finds out she's not getting anything. I know it sounds a bit vindictive, but after everything she's put me through, the thought of her facing the consequences brings a small sense of satisfaction. It's a complex mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a bit of grim satisfaction. The court preparation has been intense. My lawyer has been thorough, ensuring we have all our evidence lined up and ready. I've had to relive moments I'd rather forget, but it's necessary. I want to be prepared for whatever happens. I've also had to prepare myself mentally and emotionally for seeing her again, for hearing her side, and for whatever accusations or defenses she might throw my way. Despite everything, there's a sense of finality that's coming with this court date. It feels like the closing of one chapter and the tentative beginning of another. I'm trying to stay focused on the positive aspects, on the future I'm building for myself and my boys. They deserve a stable, loving environment, and I'm determined to give them that. So that's where I am right now, balancing the serenity of fishing and church with the harsh realities of court and work. It's a delicate act, but I'm managing. One day at a time, right? Thanks for listening, everyone. Your support means a lot. Today, I celebrate a surge of strength and the beginning of living a full life, or at least squeezing out the maximum of what I can. Yesterday was the trial, and I'm here to tell you all about it. It's been a long, arduous journey, but I finally feel like I'm moving toward a better place. The lead up to the trial was intense. My family and I spent weeks preparing, gathering evidence, and getting ready for the big day. My lawyer was meticulous, making sure we had everything in order. We gathered photos, text messages, and testimonies, building a solid case. It wasn't easy to relive all those painful moments, but I knew it was necessary. My brothers were there every step of the way, offering support and helping me stay focused. My mom, always the emotional rock, was also deeply involved. She made sure I was eating, sleeping, and staying somewhat sane during this whole process. The night before the trial, we all gathered at my place, everyone except my soon-to-be ex-wife, of course. There was a sense of unity, a shared purpose that made me feel stronger. My dad, typically stoic, even offered a few words of encouragement, which meant a lot coming from him. We went over the details one last time, making sure everyone knew their role and what to expect. It was like preparing for battle, and I was ready to face whatever came my way. On the morning of the trial, we all met outside the courthouse. My brothers, my parents, a couple of close friends, and my lawyer were there. It was a somber yet determined group. We exchanged hugs and reassuring words, trying to keep the mood light but knowing the gravity of what lay ahead. I felt a mixture of anxiety and resolve, but seeing my family and friends rally around me gave me the strength I needed. As we entered the courthouse, I spotted my wife and her lawyer in the hallway. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her hands and avoiding eye contact. It was a far cry from the confident woman I once knew. I didn't approach her, didn't exchange any words. There was nothing left to say. The courtroom was a cold, intimidating place, but I felt a strange sense of calm as we took our seats. My lawyer started presenting our case, laying out the evidence with precision. He showed the photos, read the text messages, and called witnesses who testified to the affair and its impact on our family. It was tough to sit through, but I kept my focus on the end goal, freedom and justice. When it was my wife's turn, her lawyer tried to paint a different picture, but it was clear they were grasping at straws. She looked increasingly uncomfortable, her face reddening as the evidence mounted against her. At one point, she even broke down in tears, pleading for forgiveness and understanding, but I stood firm, showing no regret or hesitation. This was about more than just our failed marriage. It was about integrity and respect. The judge listened carefully, asking questions and weighing the evidence. When it was all said and done, the verdict was clear. My wife lost, and it was evident that she felt the full weight of her actions. There was a palpable sense of horror and shame in her eyes as the judge ruled in my favor. The court awarded me full custody of our boys, and she was left with nothing. It was a victory, but it was also a stark reminder of the devastation infidelity can cause. After the trial, my family and friends gathered around me, offering their congratulations and support. There was a sense of relief, a collective sigh as we realized it was finally over. My mom hugged me tightly, my dad gave me a firm pat on the back, and my brothers shared words of encouragement. It was a moment of triumph, but also one of reflection. We had all been through so much, and it felt good to finally close this chapter. My wife's family, on the other hand, turned their backs on her. They couldn't believe what she had done, and they made it clear they wanted nothing to do with her. She stood alone in the hallway, a picture of regret and isolation. I watched her for a moment, but I felt no sympathy, no regret. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. I later learned that she went to stay with some friends. I guess they were the only ones willing to take her in after everything. It's hard to imagine what her life must be like now, but that's not my concern anymore. My focus is on my boys and rebuilding our lives. As I sit here today, reflecting on the journey and the trial, I feel a sense of peace. It's been a long road, but I'm finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm stronger than I was before, and I know I can face whatever comes next. Thanks for listening, everyone. Your support has been invaluable, and I'm grateful for each and every one of you. It's been 1 year since my last update, and what a year it's been. I wanted to check in and let you all know how things have turned out. If you've been following my story, you know it's been a journey filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimately, renewal. Looking back, it's incredible to see how far I've come. First things first, let's talk about my ex-wife. It seems she hasn't quite figured out how to stand on her own 2 feet. A few months ago, she started reaching out to my friends, asking them for money. Can you believe that? After everything she put me through, she had the audacity to try and involve my friends in her mess. Naturally, my friends told me about it right away. They were confused and didn't know how to handle it, but I was clear. These are her problems. She's responsible for her own situation. I felt a sense of vindication in setting that boundary. It was her actions that led her to this point, and she had to face the consequences. It wasn't easy hearing that she was still struggling, but I couldn't let her drag me or anyone else back into her drama. I've moved on, and I need to keep moving forward. It's tough love, but it's the only way. I refuse to let her continue to be a negative influence in my life. Work has been fantastic. Returning to my barbershop full-time was one of the best decisions I made. The routine, the craft, and the satisfaction of seeing my clients happy have all been incredibly grounding. Business has picked up, and I've even expanded my services. I hired another barber, and together we've built a loyal customer base. It feels great to be thriving professionally, especially after such a tumultuous time. There's something about cutting hair that's therapeutic. It's a chance to focus on something tangible, to create something with your hands, and to see immediate results. My clients have been amazing too, offering words of encouragement and support. Many of them knew something was up, and when I finally opened up about what I was going through, their response was overwhelming. It's like having a second family, and it's made going to work something I look forward to every day. Fishing remains my sanctuary. There's nothing quite like being out on the boat, just me and the vast expanse of water. It's become my place of solace, where I can clear my mind and reconnect with nature. I've caught some impressive fish this past year, but more than that, I've caught moments of peace and clarity. There's something about the simplicity of fishing that makes everything else fade away. It's just you, the water, and the quiet. It's been essential for my healing. I still remember the first time I went fishing after everything happened. I was a mess, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions. But as soon as I cast that first line, something shifted. The rhythm of casting and reeling in, the sound of the water lapping against the boat, it all worked together to calm my mind. Now it's a regular part of my routine. Whenever I feel overwhelmed, I know I can head out to the lake and find some peace. Another big change in my life is how much more I've been connecting with my parents and friends. Losing my wife was a blow, but it also brought me closer to the people who truly matter. I've made it a point to visit my parents regularly, and those visits have become something I look forward to. We talk about everything and nothing, just enjoying each other's company. My friends, too, have been a huge support. We hang out more often, whether it's grabbing a beer, watching a game, or just shooting the breeze. Those moments of connection have been invaluable. I can't emphasize enough how important these connections have been. In the past, I took them for granted. I was so focused on my marriage and my career that I didn't realize how much I was missing out on. Now, I cherish every moment with my family and friends. They've been my rock, and I've made it a priority to nurture those relationships. Reflecting on everything that's happened, I realize how important it is to choose the right people to let into your life. It's something we often take for granted until something goes wrong. I let my ex-wife into my life, and it was a mistake. She showed her true colors, and it nearly broke me. But through it all, I've learned to value the people who treat me and my loved ones with respect and kindness. It's a lesson I won't forget, and it's one I want to share with all of you. Be careful who you let in. Trust is earned, and it's precious. Don't give it away lightly. I know this sounds like common sense, but it's something that can easily be overlooked when emotions are involved. We want to see the best in people, especially those we love. But sometimes, that can blind us to the reality of who they really are. It's a hard lesson, but it's an important one. Don't let anyone into your life who doesn't deserve to be there. Surround yourself with people who uplift you, who respect you, and who genuinely care about your well-being. To those of you who've followed my story and offered your support, thank you. Your advice, encouragement, and kind words have meant the world to me. This community has been a source of strength, and I'm grateful for each and every one of you. Life has a way of testing us, but it's how we respond that defines us. I'm proud of the man I've become through this process, and I know I couldn't have done it without your support. As I sit here reflecting on the past year, I feel a sense of peace. The wounds are healing, and I'm moving forward. There will always be scars, reminders of what I went through, but they don't define me. They're just part of my story, a story that's still being written. I've also made some new connections over the past year. I've joined a local fishing club, and it's been great to meet other people who share my passion. We go on trips together, share tips and stories, and it's been a wonderful addition to my life. It's funny how something as simple as a shared hobby can bring people together and create a sense of community. There's also been some interest in my barbershop from the local media. A small newspaper did a feature on us, talking about our story and how we've built a strong customer base. It was a bit surreal to see my face in the paper, but it's also been great for business. People are drawn to stories of resilience and community, and I'm proud to be a part of that narrative. My boys are thriving too. They're young, but they're resilient. I've made it a point to be there for them, to create a stable and loving environment. We've established new routines, and it's been amazing to watch them grow and adapt. They're my anchor, my reason for pushing forward, and they give me hope for the future. One of the things I've learned over this past year is the importance of self-care. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day grind and forget to take care of yourself, but I've made it a priority to do things that make me happy, that bring me peace. Whether it's fishing, spending time with loved ones, or just taking a moment to breathe and reflect, self-care is essential.